Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really significant story unfolding in the tech world. The recent appointment of Lip-Bu Tan as the new CEO of Intel.
Right, Lip-Bu. And you brought this to our attention, I think, because you're following the tech industry closely, yeah.
Yeah,
And you're particularly interested in understanding what these kinds of leadership changes mean.
exactly. Especially when they involve, international business and these big questions around national security.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a report here from WSF Tech that really digs into a central question. Lip-Bu Tan has this, well, extensive history of investing in Chinese businesses.
Extensive is putting it mildly.
Yeah, we're talking like a reported $200 million across hundreds of them. So the question is, does this raise red flags, about him leading an American company like Intel?
Especially Intel, given their sensitive government contracts. It feels like a story with potentially, well, big implications.
Absolutely. And what immediately jumps out, and it's pretty understandable why, is this detail.
Hmm.
The report says 8 of these Chinese businesses in Tan's investment portfolio are allegedly linked to the People's Liberation Army.
The PLA, yeah. China's main military force.
So that just adds this really critical layer, a national security layer, to the whole picture.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack this a bit, because when Lip-Bu Tan's appointment was first announced, he was succeeding Pat Gelsinger.
Mm-hmm.
The initial reaction seemed, well, pretty optimistic, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's a well-known figure, led Cadence Systems previously.
Right, a known quantity in semiconductors.
Exactly. His long track record, his success managing Cadence, it suggested, he could bring valuable expertise, maybe a steady hand to Intel.
But here's where the narrative kind of takes a sharp turn. This WTF F-Tech report really highlights the main concern, Tan's deep financial ties to China.
Hmm.
It says he reportedly has authority over 40 Chinese companies and holds minority stakes in, get this, over 600 others.
Wow. That's a massive web of financial interests. It really is substantial.
So the argument is conflict of interest.
That's the core argument being made, yes.
Yeah.
These extensive investments, they create a potential conflict. Intel is the largest chipmaker in the U.S., deeply involved in defense, other government contracts.
Right. Sensitive stuff.
So the worry is that Tan's business priorities could be seen, at the very least, as potentially conflicting with Intel's best interests, given those significant financial ties to Chinese entities.
Yeah. And the report even quotes Andrew King from Vesteel Ventures. He doesn't mince words. Says Tan is, quote, unqualified to serve as the head of any company competing against China, let alone one with actual intelligence and national security ramifications like Intel.
Oof. That's a pretty stark assessment. It really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The potential for, I guess, divided loyalties, or maybe just the perception of it.
Even if he's totally committed to Intel.
Well, yeah, even if he is fully committed to acting in Intel's best interests, the sheer scale of his financial involvement in China, it just inevitably raises questions. Questions about potential influence, how decisions might be made,
Okay, now, the report does touch on whether Tan has actually, sold off these Chinese ventures, divested. What's the story there?
Right, so the WCF Tech report mentions claims, suggestions that Tan has indeed exited these Chinese investments.
Okay.
But it immediately brings up a counter-narrative. It cites Reuters, saying that Chinese databases, the official records there, still reflect his ongoing financial stakes.
Ah, so the public data doesn't match the claim.
Seems like it. And importantly, the report points out that concrete records, proof of these divestments, they haven't really surfaced publicly yet.
So assertions, maybe, but the available info doesn't fully back it up. And it's important to remember, like the report says, most of these investments are through his VC firm, right? Walden International.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And that adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it? Divesting from a big VC firm with tons of holdings, that can be a complicated process. It might take time for changes to be officially documented.
Sure.
But the current lack of clear evidence, well, it certainly fuels those existing concerns about potential conflicts.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Legal versus ethical. The report makes an interesting distinction there.
Yeah, it does. What's interesting to note is that right now, it isn't actually illegal for U.S. entities to invest in China.
Generally speaking.
Generally, yeah. Unless those specific companies are on a restrictive list, one issued by the U.S. Treasury.
And Tan's investments.
The report indicates he doesn't appear to have investments in any companies on those banned lists. So it suggests his financial activities in China might be, at this point, legally okay.
Okay, so from a purely legal standpoint, maybe in the clear. for now.
Right. But the report quickly pivots, doesn't it? It moves to the ethical and national security dimensions.
Emphasizing that just because something's legal doesn't mean it's, well, without risk or ethical dilemmas.
Exactly. Especially when you have a company like Intel, with its close ties to the U.S. government through defense contracts. We're talking a highly sensitive technology involved here.
So it prompts this really important question, right, about the broader responsibilities of leaders in these strategically critical industries.
hmm Even if legal lines aren't crossed, are there higher ethical duties or national security considerations that maybe should take precedence, especially when dealing with a country seen as a major geopolitical competitor?
It's tricky. Now, on the flip side, the report does offer a counterargument. It looks at the potential upsides, the advantages Tan's experience in China could bring Intel.
Yeah, and that's fair to consider. If you look at the bigger picture, global tech competition, Tan's deep understanding of the Chinese tech landscape, that could actually give Intel a significant edge over its rivals.
How so?
While the report highlights his past successes, it even mentions his early investment in SMIC.
Oh, right, Sesmic.
Right.
Big semiconductor player now.
Exactly. He was a seed investor. And think about Intel now, aiming to gain ground in the Chinese AI hardware market with their Gaudi lineup.
Those are the AI accelerator chips.
That's them. Specialized processors for AI workloads. The report suggests Tan's connections, his insights into that market, could be invaluable for getting Gaudi traction there.
So his insider knowledge could be a real asset. That's a compelling point.
It really highlights the tension here, doesn't it? On one hand, legitimate national security worries. On the other, his expertise could be incredibly valuable for Intel's ability to compete effectively in a vital global market.
It's a serious balancing act. High stakes.
Definitely.
The report also mentions U.S. authorities getting involved. Specifically, the Department of Defense has reportedly raised questions about Tan's qualifications.
Yes, and that really underscores how seriously these potential conflicts are being viewed, right up to the highest levels of government.
The DoD, they have significant ties to Intel through defense contracts.
Precisely. So the fact that they're reportedly scrutinizing this appointment, it speaks volumes about the potential implications.
And the report notes, this is interesting, that the final decision on whether Intel's defense contracts might be at risk could fall to the Trump administration. Given the report's likely future perspective, that points toward potential political factors down the line.
It does suggest this whole issue could get tangled up in broader political and trade dynamics between the U.S. and China, which, could further complicate things for both Intel and its new CEO.
Interesting side note the WCF Tech Report brings up. It mentions a wider trend, the increasing number of major U.S. tech firms led by CEOs of Chinese descent. What should we take from that?
Well, I think that wider trend probably reflects the immense value the tech industry places on individuals with deep understanding and experience in the Chinese market.
Because it's such a huge market?
It's huge, yeah, and incredibly important in the global tech ecosystem. It highlights this complex interplay of international talent and business in tech today, understanding different cultural, economic landscapes. It's crucial for success.
Makes sense. Okay, one last piece. The report briefly references another article suggesting China's new semiconductor policy that could potentially hurt American chip makers like Intel,
Right.
while maybe favoring others like TSMC.
Right, and this just adds another layer of competitive pressure on Intel, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if Chinese government policies shift to favor domestic companies or maybe non-U.S. firms like TSMC, Intel might face even bigger hurdles in that critical market.
So having a CEO with deep China experience, that could theoretically help navigate that.
In theory, yes. It could help Intel navigate those complexities, those potential disadvantages. But again, it loops right back to those fundamental questions about potential conflicts of interest, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so let's try and sum up what we've dug into here. This deep dive into the WCCF Tech Report. It clearly shows a major debate around Lip-Bu Tan becoming Intel's CEO. The heart of the concern is his huge web of investments in Chinese businesses. Hundreds of them, including some with these alleged ties to the PLA, the military.
Which raises potential conflict of interest questions big time, especially given Intel's critical role in U.S. defense and government contracts.
But we've also looked at the other side, the counterarguments. Tan's deep experience in China could actually give Intel a valuable competitive edge, especially in that growing AI hardware sector.
Right. And we touched on the legal side. His investments might be technically legal for now versus the ethical and national security worries, which seem to be the main sticking points.
With the U.S. Department of Defense reportedly taking a close look. And really, understanding these kinds of high-level appointments, the intense scrutiny they face, it gives us, and hopefully you listening, some crucial insight. Insight into how complex these relationships are between global business, tech leadership, and national security.
Absolutely. These are all major forces shaping the tech landscape that, we're all trying to follow.
So this whole situation, it leaves us with some pretty big questions to think about, doesn't it?
It really does. It underscores this incredibly intricate balancing act. Global companies, their leaders, they have to navigate this deeply interconnected world.
What does it actually mean for a company like Intel, so closely tied to the U.S. government, to be led by someone with such extensive connections in a nation often seen as a geopolitical rival?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And maybe another one is, how will governments, how will regulatory bodies adapt? Adapt to these evolving scenarios in the tech industry to protect national interests, but also, somehow encourage global innovation and competition at the same time.
Hmm. Lots to think about there. Definitely a situation to keep watching.